This is Daniel from Black Mountain Hunger. You are listening to the Rock... Jesus Christ.
All right, sorry, go ahead. I'll clean it up.
This is Daniel from Black Mountain Hunger. You are listening to the Rock God Podcast.
Vaya con Dios, amigo.
What's that mean?
Go with God.
You're listening to the Rock God Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Rock God Podcast, the only podcast that talks to rock and heavy metal musicians and artists about their thoughts or opinions about God. I'm your host, David Locklear, the owner, founder, and head writer at heavy-vinyl.com. Today we're talking to Connor Garrity, vocalist for doom-tinged rock band All Hail The Yeti. All Hail The Yeti dropped their self-titled debut in 2016 and immediately garnered a dedicated following of fans with their mixture of hook-laden lyrics and locomotive riffs as they crushed ears with two more releases, Screams from a Black Wilderness and Highway Crosses. Their music evokes a hair-raising mixture of superstitious ritual and trippy backwoods folklore, all drenched in the countercultural, mind-smashing, gut-punching bile of like-minded spiritual shamans like Acid Bath, with a down-tuned sludge of stoner rock and the electric injection from four-on-the-floor classic rock pioneers. As they gear up to hit the road this spring with Life of Agony and Doyle for the Beast Coast Monsters Tour, Connor took a few minutes to talk with Rock God about his Catholic upbringing, bullying, suicide, the cult horror movie Session 9, and how he doesn't actually want to burn Christians at the stake.
It was 1498.
getting ready to go on the Beast Coast Monsters tour with Life of Agony and Doyle. How you feeling about that?
We're super excited, man. We've toured with Life of Agony a couple times in the last couple of years, so it's always good to get back out with people that are family and friends, and it just makes everything go a lot smoother. And those guys and girls are great, and they treat us like family, and super excited. And of course Doyle too. Like that's it's a pretty cool thing going out with Doyle, and being a Misfits fan, and so I can't say enough good things.
Yeah, and he's just coming off of doing that those reunion shows with Glenn Danzig, so I imagine that he's probably, in all honesty, I imagine he's pretty pumped about doing his own thing instead of having to revisit Misfits stuff as much.
Of course, yeah. Maybe kind of be fun doing something like that, I guess, maybe if as an artist.
Right.
Your back catalog from when you were super young, and that was like the start of your career. I mean, that's how I would be, but I guess everybody's different.
Yeah, I think that, considering that's what you're sort of known for and people have been clamoring for it for years, it seems like it would be kind of a cool thing to do. So, okay, well, let me get some of the basic stuff out of the way. Like, how did you guys form to begin with? You've only been around for a few years, but you've made a pretty big mark so far. I started the band in about 2007. Yeah, but I mean, we were a product of two other bands. Like the original guitar player and myself were both in different bands in LA, and we were just those bands had kind of come to the end of their lifespan, I guess, and we were just kind of like, are you interested in doing something else? And like I told him kind of like the what I was wanting to do and the style and like the kind of sound and direction I wanted to go, and he was 100% on board, and him and I started just writing songs in there was like a backroom recording studio kind of area of the tattoo shop I was working in, and those were like the beginning, the songs that we wrote there were like the beginning songs that we would later go on to be the start of our career, I guess. Wow. So, I mean, you're talking like a 10-year window between the formation of the band and then your actual like self-titled record coming out. Yeah,
the self-titled record came out in 2012, so it was a good at least 5 years before that even happened. But, we were writing a lot, and then we were kind of switched band members a couple times and just trying to find our space in LA as an independent band. It's really tough, because everybody's like, it's a very incestuous kind of a scene. Everyone's like everyone's here to be somebody and get there and get naked and be a star and whatever it is, right? We just wanted to make music, and so you get one guy in the band, he says he's all excited, and if somebody else offers him money for something, then they're gone, so it's just, so yeah, we just did that for a while, and then, in 2009, he decided that he was done. He was going back to Boston to raise a family and start a business and that kind of thing, and I wasn't finished, and I wanted to keep going at it and keep pushing the band. So me and Nick, who's in the band now, the bass player, singer, we kind of just said, like, let's keep it going. And that was kind of like the turnaround for the band. That was like where we, that was like the start of it for us. And by 2010, 11, we had released we self-released our own EP. And and then that was kind of it. Like we started doing a lot of live shows, like doing the local scene in LA, and things started to kind of snowball for us. And we just got the attention of a few labels, and everybody was coming to the shows, and then by 2012 we released the first record, the self-titled record, and it's been just an easy battle since.
Yeah, no obstacles anymore. It's all done. It's all like, behind you now.
Yeah, everybody's all super excited to get signed and like, I want to be in a signed band. And it's like, no. That's when the work really starts.
Yeah.
When you're I think about like, oh man, it would be so good to be able to just be in a just a little independent local band again. You don't have to worry about anything. There's no work. You just go and play and have fun and party, and there's nothing on the line. Now it's like our entire lives are on the line, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it makes it, yeah, you know, it's a lot more, how are you? A lot more at stake, you know, so. But like I said, I wouldn't change anything. I love it, and we're happy what we're doing, and things are just kind of, you know, for us, it's been a marathon, not a 100-yard dash, if that's the easiest way to explain it. You know, if anybody's said that we haven't earned ourselves a spot in the heavy metal community, then they haven't really paid attention to what we've been doing.
Well, it's funny because I think a lot of people don't quite grasp the idea of what it is to be in a band and have like the dynamic can sometimes work between band members, but it won't click with an audience. And then there are other times where you get lucky and your dynamic does click with an audience. And you hopefully have people who are on board enough to say, okay, let's put the work in, as opposed to, well, man, I'm an artist and I don't feel like doing that anymore, so I got to leave the band, and then the dynamic screws up and the audience kind of tunes out and blah, blah, blah. It's a really fine-tuned balancing act.
Absolutely. I mean, we're no strangers to that, you know, like we've been through, I don't know, 5 guitar players since the beginning, 3 drummers. Like you just, like I said, you get people that are like, all right, cool, well, I'm not making money doing this now and I need to move on. Or you know, like you said, like, I'm not, like, artistically, this isn't what I want to do. I want to go do my own thing. You know, so it's just, as a band leader, I guess that's what I would be considered. I don't, like, think of myself like that, but, like, it's the band that I started, and, like, I'm the one that's been in it the longest. So as that for me, it's, like, tough to, you know, I always feel the pressure of, like, making sure everybody's, like, happy and comfortable and feel satisfied and they're, like, getting what they want out of it. Because if they don't, then they're going to quit, and then I got to go back to, like, finding another person. And it's just, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much like running a business. Like, I help my wife. She has a business that I help her run, you know, as my regular gig. And you know, the idea of, well, we got to meet payroll, and then there are these other bills that have to be taken care of. We got to make sure that these people are happy. You know, it's just a fine-tuned balancing act, and it's so much stress. And it's funny because I thought for the longest time that being in a band meant that, you know, you didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But the older I've gotten, it's like, no, it's just kind of like a tattooed version of a business when you really get into it. Now, one of the things that really kind of struck me about you guys when I've listened to your catalog over like the last 6 months or so, and I think personally for me, my favorite part was you guys put clips from Session 9. The movie Session 9 into your out, and that's one of my favorite horror movies that scared the living hell out of me when I saw it, 20 years ago. So when I heard Simon on your album, I was like, this is awesome. This is fucking great.
It's pretty rare that you like you don't. It's not very often that people are like that know exactly what that's from. And I that was kind of like the thing that I liked about it when we, you know, as soon as I watched the movie, and you know, I watched it once, and then I was like, man, this is a fucking weird movie. And then I watched it again, and then understood exactly what was going on. And then it all clicked with me on the second time through. And I was just like, holy shit, man, I want to use this for a song, for sure. And like, I'd seen the movie for years before we even wrote the song. But as soon as we wrote After the Great Fire, I was like, yep, that's the song that those samples are going in. And we're using those clips from that movie. And that was like, it all came together perfectly, and that was exactly what it was meant to be. So, that movie is, unbelievable.
Yeah, that was, it was funny because I was trying to tell my wife, and she had seen it, but she forgot about it. But I was, I was trying to explain to her, I was just like, they're putting the split personality part in the song. This is fucked up, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like I meant it in the best possible way, and she's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, some people just don't get it, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite flicks, just, because the audio makes it sound like, well, they found this mangled tape, and you're listening to this awful stuff, and so for you guys to put it into not only your songs, but then I kind of felt like you took some of the influence of the movie and put it into, I'd say at least the After the Dark, no, Before the Flames?
After the Great Fire.
After the Great Fire, yes, yeah. So it's like watching the video, I felt like that it actually had sort of an aesthetic that was influenced by Session 9. And am I wrong, or am I looking too far into that?
The song itself and the movie itself are kind of separate things. Like, the song was written, and like, it wasn't like we wrote the song with using Session 9 in mind. The song had gotten written, and it's a completely made up story, like, that we didn't even there's no truth to it at all. It was just a story about these kids that are in a group, like an orphanage or whatever, and they're being used as like sacrifices for the satanic cult. And the nuns are like, during the day, and they're really nice nuns and this and that, but at night, or like behind closed doors, they're actually part of this, using these kids as these rituals. So whatever, it's just about that. And then, when the song had been written, I guess, like, once the vocals had come through and like we had gotten to like the meat of the song, it's like, man, this is perfect with that, to use Session 9 with this, and it's perfect. So it wasn't like written in thought of using that, but like, I would say about 3/4 of the way through of getting the song finished, I was like, yes, we got to use the samples. So then we adjusted stuff to make certain things fit, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we cut the samples up to make them fit in the certain parts, and to come in when, the cut up Peter, like that kind of stuff. So yes and no.
Okay.
It wasn't written about the movie per se, but we wanted to use the clips from the movie in this version of our story.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, all right. Okay. So I wasn't far off, but that, I was wondering if, my bias was kind of leading into it, going, they're doing all of this because of Session 9, and it's the greatest thing ever.
I mean, essentially it is. You know what I mean? Like, the song got written, and I was just like, man, this is perfect. And then Session 9 became part of it, So it definitely, like, made the song what it is.
Right. Yeah. Now, are there any other, sort of oddball horror movies that inform some of your lyrics or ideas and whatnot?
Not really. I mean, I've always kind of just, I'm a fan of horror movies, and I'm a fan of that genre for sure. But like, I definitely, like, in the years that have passed, and like, as it's become, I don't know, I don't want to say it, but like, the horror movie, the Halloween, that whole like kind of subculture has become pretty trendy in the last, I don't know, however many years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's not really like that cool to be a horror movie fan anymore, or to be into the occult, and to, like, Halloween was always something for me. I was like, yes, I love Halloween, I love the time of year. And now it's just like every friggin' goth girl every blonde that thinks she's a goth girl is posting Halloween shit. And it's like, it's kind of taken I don't know how to say it. It's taken the, like, cool, like, scariness away from it, and made it just like, oh, okay, it's just this commercial thing where people are just using it because they want to be scary or whatever. So, definitely less and less, horror movie influence in our music now than there was, in the beginning stages, for sure.
Yeah, I would actually even say that with the song Felo de Se, kind of, steers it in that direction, the idea that it's not so much horror movie stuff, but now it's like you're actually kind of making a commentary on maybe more real life stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That song was it was like kind of our homage to Jeremy by Pearl Jam. That's essentially the story. This kid is bullied by his peers, and he just, like, doesn't understand why. He's just exactly the same as everybody. So in order to be himself, he tries to be different, or he's just different, and he just doesn't care about it. But, like, in order to, like, not be picked on anymore, he tries to do everything that they want to do, and, like, dress like them and be into the things that are cool. But really, that's not what he wants. He just wants to be himself. But these kids pick on him and torment him to the point where he's just like, all right, I've had enough. And in this day and age, in this, our social climate of what's going on now in our world, it's like, okay, a kid will come to school with a couple of guns and shoot a bunch of kids. It's like, he's like, no, fuck that. I'm going to fucking leave this world way better. And he goes into class and he slits his wrist and sprays blood all over the kids that are tormenting him.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of like, sprays it all over the wall, sprays it on these kids, and just kind of like, yeah, you get to live with this for the rest of your life. It's kind of like a beautiful disaster, kind of like, that was kind of like our version of Jeremy. And in Jeremy, you never really know whether the kid comes in and shoots himself or he shoots the kids that are fucking with him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I honestly, I think that what you're talking about would make, in a disconnected and fucked up way, but I think it would make a much more stronger impact on people than the vague Jeremy thing.
Well, that's the thing, is like a kid comes in with guns now and shoots up a school. It's like, oh, he's fucked up, he's crazy. It's got nothing to do with the fact that people were torturing this kid every time he went to school, and he felt like he had no way out. And it's like that was his like revenge or payback or whatever. So it's automatically just like swept under as being like, this kid's fault. Fuck this kid. He's deranged. He's fucked up. He shouldn't have done this shit. But it doesn't ever go back to the fact that, well, what about the kids that were like ruining this kid's life and forced them to get to this point, you know? And I'm not condoning gun violence and like that, going to a school and shooting anybody, but as a victim of bullying and, you know, being in that position, I know what it's like to feel like there's nothing left and like you've got no choice anymore, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, fortunately for me, I came from a good family. I had parents that cared. I had a brother that was, you know, a big influence on me. And like, I had ways to like, all right, I'm going to be all right. You know, as soon as I got out of high school, everything changed. And like, but some kids just don't understand that, you know, and they think that high school is their world and that's it. You know, there's nothing after high school. I've got to impress the kids. I've got to make sure these kids like me. And, you know, if they could just get through graduation and they'd understand, you know, it's like, I guess, you know, it's a shame. It sucks that kids are resorting to this, and it sucks that like gun violence, okay, this is going to work. You know, I'm going to, you know, because there's always innocent people in it that get their lives taken, and, you know, teachers, other students, blah, blah, blah. But my thing was like, man, I couldn't even imagine if some kid came into my class, you know, and slit his wrist. And, you know, because at the end of the day, he's not really physically hurting anybody but himself. And he just feels like, well, because of the way these people are treating me, it's like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And I don't, you know, he has no idea that life gets better as soon as that school door closes.
Mm-hmm.
But these kids, they, you know, like if you think of like an aggressor bully, he gets sprayed in the face with his blood. That's going to stay with him forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you can't wash that off, you know, as much as you can. You can't. It'll, you know, if he's a fucking kid with a heart and like has a conscience, you know, that shit will live with him forever. And so that was kind of like that push and pull of that song. And like, you know, it's like we didn't want to condone violence or like anything like that. Obviously, gun violence and these mass shootings and shit are just stupid and horrific. And it's definitely not something that I would ever glorify, you know, even in a song or even in imagery or anything. But at a certain point, even in maybe in a little bit of like sympathy, you kind of have to understand where these kids are coming from, and you know, when they're pushed to a point where they don't know anything better, and all they ever see is other gun shootings, other mass shootings, other kids shooting people, you know. So they're like, oh, okay, well, that kid did it. He was bullied. Maybe that'll work for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you kind of have to like, yes, it's wrong, and like. I'm rambling about this, but yes, it's wrong. You know, like they shouldn't do that, and it's fucked up, and like they're taking innocent lives and they're doing this shit. But also, it's like, well, you know, you push a bear into a corner long enough, he's going to attack. It's just kind of the way it is, and that's just nature. That's human nature, and that's mammals. You know, at the end of the day, I mean, I've been in a position where I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? You know, like, do I come to school with a bat and swing on these dudes?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or what do I do? You know, like what? And eventually one day I fucking snapped and I went after a dude with a hockey stick and I hit him across the face, and that was it.
That was the end of it, wasn't it?
That was the end of it from that dude especially, you know. And this was a kid that was my friend. You know, we were friends, but he just, whatever. I'm not even trying to ask. I'm not even like, oh, it was me or anything. But like, that was what did it for me. And I finally just was like, I'm not going to put up with this shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I fucking swung at this kid 2 times, hit him across the mouth, and that was it. And he was like, dude, I'm sorry. We apologized to me, I apologized to him, and that was it. That was the end of it.
Right, yeah, so, and you go on about your day.
You know, yeah, I mean, it was different back then. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. You know, it was like you can fist fight it out, and that's the end of it. But, like, I'm just saying that, like, you have to kind of sympathize with these kids at a certain level. You know, you have to be like, wow, man, that obviously that kid was fucking, like, you know, he's lost everything. He doesn't know what else to do, and got no parents to help him through it, or no friends, no family. Nobody's like guiding him in the right way. Like, plays fucking Call of Duty all the time, sees this gun violence, figures he knows how to fucking use a gun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the only thing that he knows is going to stop it. You know?
Yeah.
He's seen so much of it. He's seen so much of it on TV. He's seen all these other kids that have done it, you know, going back to Columbine. Those kids were fucking had enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah. I think one of the things that, you know, you mentioned that makes a lot of sense is, you know, for the longest time I've, you know, always been the advocate for, okay, you know, you've got to hit back and you've got to hit hard and they'll stop. However, having a support system, like you said, having a good family at home or having friends, that really helps reinforce that. But when a lot of these guys, it seems like they don't have that kind of support system, nor do they have even like the mental capacity or understanding of how to deal with something like that and to do it effectively where they're not going to ruin their lives and they're going to be able to go back into it and be, I guess, a part of the school system again.
Of course. And I think that a lot of it too, sometimes just getting a hug from somebody that's older than you that says, hey, you know what, I've been there and life gets better. So just don't worry about it. Try to get through. And, you know, it literally will fucking change a kid's life. And it did for me, you know, like I had my family that, I at the very least, I didn't want to go home crying to my dad because it was the 90s and it was like, I don't want my dad to know that I'm not tough, you know, but my dad was not like that. My dad's like, what's wrong? And like, it's going to be all right, that kind of thing. And it just goes miles and miles. And you'd be like, all right, cool. Well, at least I have my family, you know? And it's unfortunate that that's the way shit is now. And like a lot of it's due to these parents, you know, these parents are like in their 40s now, 40s and 45, you know, like my age. And these kids are, here, give them an iPad. Here, give them video games. Like, they'll be fine. They're literally breeding these fucking, like zombie kids, you know, that don't even like really have any compassion for anything other than just like, I want what I want, and if I don't get it, I'm going to flip out.
Yeah, I've actually been reading about there's even become I think a newer, like a strange mental illness that has come with too much screen time, where it makes someone almost so disconnected that their brain stops being able to differentiate between the screen and reality. Like, and that makes sense. I mean, yeah, because the idea that you're just staring into this thing all the time. And I remember people saying that about me because I grew up in the 90s too. You know, the idea that, well, you're watching too much MTV and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, there was something to that. And I get what they're saying now, but at the time I'm like, oh no, it's nothing to worry about. But you know, now because you had to be disconnected in the 90s because you had to get in the car and there was no way to bring MTV with you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You had to get out of the house and go places.
Yeah. So it was like, there was no way.
MTV wasn't shooting up, fucking guns, blowing shit up, fucking hiding IUDs. Like, I mean, these video games, I'm not blaming it on video games, but like, these kids get headsets on and they think they're part of this game, you know? And now it's like, hey, you know, I mean, yeah, I had video games when I was a kid and it was awesome, but like we weren't immersed in it like fucking virtual reality and like headsets and like yelling at other kids and like, I'm going to fucking kill you. And, you know, it was just like you were a character in the game, you pressed the buttons and if it didn't work, you died. It's like, all right, cool, I got to start over. The first thing you did was smash your Nintendo, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, well, you know, and that goes back to the whole idea that, you know, the suicide idea. You know, there are so many people online now that they will so freely say "kill yourself" to someone, and I think that is fucked up.
Yeah, it's fucking awful.
Yeah, it's like that's one of those things that I guess when I was growing up, or we were growing up at about the same time, you know, the idea that to say that to somebody was almost seemed verboten. Like, you know, that was not something you said because that was shitty. But, well, yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm going to dive away from the bully thing. I could probably go on, a little while for that as well. Because I actually, when I was growing up, I was a bit of a dick to a couple of people. And
yeah, we all were, you know, we all had our times. And like, I definitely like did things I didn't want to do, but that's because other people were showing me that's what they did.
Yeah. You
know, it's like, all right, well, I'm getting bullied. I want to bully someone too.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the same thing. I actually, a friend of mine now is one of the guys I used to just completely dick with all the time. And I forgot exactly what happened, but he ended up coming back around. And one night I was half drunk and I was just like, hey man, I just got to let you know I was an asshole and I apologize, Please don't hold it against me.
I probably said, that says a lot about you and your character, and that probably went a long way with that guy. As much as he's an adult now and he's like, whatever, he probably was like, wow. Because, we're kids, and we do things because other people are doing things, and you want to be, fit in, and, if you see, your friends are bullying someone, and you don't want to get bullied, so you bully someone else, too.
Yeah.
That's how I was, it's like, okay, well, shit. And I had a buddy of mine, one of my oldest friends. The guys that were doing it to me were buddies. They were friends, They pick on each other, and they pick on me. And I had a friend of mine, he's still one of my best friends. I've been friends with him since the first grade. And years ago, I ran into him, I hadn't seen him in years. I moved all away from home. I live fucking 2,500 miles from where I grew up. And I was going through, and he's like, hey, man, we were hanging out. And he's like, I just want to say I'm really, really sorry for all that shit. I was a fucked up dude. And I took shit out on you, and I shouldn't have done that shit. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, man, you're the only one that's ever said anything.
Yeah.
And now we have a fucking great relationship. We're fucking close friends. We talk all the time, and we don't live close together, but that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it does something, a good thing for your soul, on both ends.
Absolutely. To be able to admit that you did something wrong, it takes a strong person to be able to be like, hey, I fucked up. Most people are just, it's the ego that's in the way,
Yeah, and I think actually growing up the way I did, it was supposed to be a little bit tougher, and to admit fault was generally considered a weakness, and so it was almost like swallowing your tongue to admit you did something wrong. Yeah, let me ask you, a couple of questions I'm very curious about. So, in the song "Daughter of the Morning Star," and by the way, that video is awesome. But it's like, so me as a Christian, whenever I hear a chorus like "Burn the Christians one by one," I'm just like, damn, that's me, man.
Well, of course, and that's. Yeah, so shoot, and I'll explain.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, I figured that song is just sort of a story made up about, like Salem witch trials, religious zealotry, things of that nature. But,
exactly.
What are your genuine feelings about, organized religion and God and whatnot?
I grew up Catholic. My family, my father's side of the family is Irish Catholic, and my mother's side of the family is Irish Protestant. So you can understand how that would have went over in the 70s. So my mom met my dad when my dad was at the tail end of his first marriage. And my dad got a divorce, which already is taboo in the Catholic religion.
Yeah.
So that was happening. My mom came in. My dad and my mom were the ones that were meant to be together. He was married. His first marriage had come to an end. Well, I come to find out later on that my grandparents, who I adored and I grew up idolizing, didn't treat my mom very well. Mm-hmm. When my mom and my dad first started dating, and I was never mad at them about it. It wasn't their fault. It was more their religion that told them that they should have. And it was like, she's Protestant, she's not one of us. And my grandmother wouldn't talk to my mom, would like for a long time, a couple of years. And, and my mom even said, she's like, it was tough because I have a huge family. My dad's side of the family is a huge Irish Catholic family. I have 35 first cousins on my dad's side.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big family. So my mom comes into this, like Christmas dinners and these things, and there's 75, 80 people, Nobody's really there's a couple people that didn't care and were younger and my mom got along with, my aunts or whatever. But my grandparents, not so much my grandfather, my grandmother. I don't even feel like I'm talking bad about it because I'm not. I love her and God rest her soul. She's the best thing woman that ever walked the earth. But
right.
These are these faults that people have because of what was enforced on them when they were young. And you know, it really woke me up and made me realize I was never forced to go to church. I never, like, it wasn't something that was forced on us because of my mom and my dad's, their differences. You know, my mom wasn't forced to be religious, and, like, they were all kind of, like, allowed to kind of believe what they want, but also they still had to abide by these strict, like, Protestant rules at home, and, like, you can't have a boyfriend, and, like, this and kind of that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, so, the only time that I was ever really exposed to, like, I went to Catholic school. I went to Catholic public school. So it wasn't, like, uniforms and, like, girls and boys, but it was, like, co-ed. But we had religious classes. We had, you know, prayer in the morning, prayer in the afternoon before school's over. We, like, had all these things that were going on that, you know, for the longest time, I just was like, that was just part of my life. Like, it was just what happens when you go to school. We celebrated Christmas because of the birth of Christ, and, like, you know, and as time went on and I got older and I started to, like, dig in and, like, learn more about my family and my mom, I'd, like, learn these things about my grandmother, and it really, really upset me. Like, I was just like, you know, my mom was never mad about it. She just kind of just said, like, no, it's just what grandmother was taught.
Mm-hmm.
That's how she was taught. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's bullshit. That's what she was taught, and that's what the people before her were taught, and you're going back thousands of years now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I started to do a lot of research on, and believe me, I'm not, this isn't every Christian or every, you know, it's not even just about Christianity. It's about a lot of organized religion, in my opinion.
Right.
You know, there's been a lot of atrocities due to the Christian religion, you know, like,
mm-hmm.
for thousands of years. And to me, I was like, well, why would I want to, like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And this is more Catholic, right? Believe something like this, where they've done so many horrible things to so many good people over the years, or people that just didn't deserve any of it. And then my grandfather had passed away. I think it would have been 98, 99, something like that. And I was just like, I had just moving away from home. I was living in Vancouver, learning a lot about myself. I was playing music, you know, partying. I was discovering, like, my independence as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And we went back to Edmonton for my grandfather's funeral, and we're at the church, like, my church where my school is attached to, or whatever, like, that's, you know, we're doing his mass, and the priest is stand up, sit down, follow me, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about my grandfather, like all the shit he's saying about, like, these things that he's saying about my grandfather. I'm like, he never even met my grandfather, you know? And I'm like, this is all bullshit.
Right.
This is all bullshit to me. This is all a fucking lie. Even the priest is standing in front of all these people, lying to their faces about what he thinks he knows about my grandfather. You know, Mr. Gerard Garrity was a great man, this and that, da, da, da. It's like, how the fuck do you know? He could have been a fucking tyrant. You know what I mean? Like, he could have been he wasn't. He was a great man, and he fucking treated people like, I mean, he was the best. You know, came from nothing, built a fucking empire or whatever kind of a shit, you know? But to hear this guy, like, it's just like he was just spewing shit that he was told to say, you know? And I was just like, you know what, fuck this. This is a fucking joke.
So it was like he was following a script in some way?
Exactly. Or like one of my aunts gave him something to read off and say, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, man, this is so fucked. And it just kind of like had solidified my beliefs for the past few years about all this shit that I had, like, learned on my own, you know?
Mm-hmm.
From I don't know. I guess for me, I'm an independent person, and I follow the beat of my drum, and whatever works for anybody, it's fine. I don't care. You know, I'm never one to, like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do this, you can't do that. Like, if you want to believe that, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
As long as you're not telling me what I should believe and trying to convince me that you're right, then it's a problem. Or, like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that would have been the start of my, like almost like, I'm like, you know what? I want to fucking fight back. This is bullshit. Mm-hmm. I went through my entire childhood thinking, like, oh my God, my school is the greatest. These people are so nice. And then I'm, like, learning all this shit, you know? And I'm like, man, all of it was a fucking lie. I was lied to my entire childhood. Mm-hmm. So now I'm pissed off, right? Like, now I'm, like, angry. And so at that point, it was like, okay, well, I'm the opposite now. I don't believe in any of this shit. I think that this is all bullshit. Antichrist is basically where I was at. You know? And And that was just out of ignorance. I was more like, and that was also like to be, you know, as a show, you know, oh yeah, fuck that. But now as I've gotten older, you know, it's less about, you know, like I can't believe in the devil if I don't believe in God, kind of a thing, you know? And so for me, as I grew and as I like became more of an adult and like more in tune with myself, I understood like really what it was that God to me was about. You know, God wasn't about what was written down in a book, you know, the Bible or the Kabbalah or like all this shit. That's not what it is to me. To me, God is like, it's like what's inside me, my inner self, you know, like to be able to walk around and like the sun's out, you know, if none of these things happened, we'd all be dead. If there was no sun, that's it. It's over. So I you know, I understood now that like everybody's interpretation of God is different and it's not something that I need to address to the world. Like, fuck, you know, screw Christianity and like this and that. It's like, it just, I've kind of like grown to care less about it and understand that like, to me, it's just like, I don't, you know, if that's what you want to believe, go for it.
Right.
So that's kind of like the long version of a longer story.
Well, no, I mean, that makes sense because a lot of the times I think that when I was the same way. It was like when I was younger, what happened with me was I went to a Christian school growing up, and my problem was always that I found a great disconnect between what I was being told and what was actually in the Bible. And what ended up happening was I basically drifted away from the people teaching, and I drifted more towards God, and if that makes sense. Yeah, and it was the idea that I kind of decided that I was not going to listen to people anymore, that if I was going to actually have a direct relationship with God, I'll do it myself.
Exactly. And that's what I think everybody should do. You know what I mean? It's not about what's written in some book. It's about how you feel about it. And your version of God may be, and I'm not saying that it is, but you may be this dude, white beard and fucking God, you know, that might be your version. Some people's version of God is Buddha. Like it's all kind of the same thing at the end of the day. And I think it's more about a way to be than who to follow.
Yeah. And I actually feel like when you're younger, you need to go through some kind of fury and rebellion to come to this sort of tempered place when you get older, like you're saying, where you're not as worried about it anymore, and you kind of, I almost feel like you have a better perspective when you get older because you're like, I'm not as pissed off, and I think I can see clearer.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot, too, of, like, and you know, like, I'm sure it's a lot of, like, this about a lot of, like, organized religions. It's all based on fear, you know? It's like, you can't do that or else you're going to burn in the fiery pits of hell.
Yeah.
You can't do this, otherwise you're going to sin, you're going to repent, and this and that. It's like, so my whole childhood, I was like, fuck, man, I can't do anything fun.
Yeah.
You know, and then when I became an adult, it's like, well, I don't want to be with just one girl. You know what I mean? Like, I want to find the right girl. I don't want to just marry the first girl that like that has me. You know, there's so much out there, and like for me, it was like this world is so big and massive. Like there's so many things to see and people to experience, and like so I'm gonna go to hell if I have sex with like numerous women.
Yeah.
Fuck that. You know what I'm saying? Or if I do drugs, like all these things were a sin, and I'm like, man, I love doing all these things.
Right.
I love doing drugs. I love drinking. I love having promiscuous sex. You know, like, in my 20s, you know, like that's what I wanted to do. And so that, for me at that time, it was like, okay, well that's bullshit. And I attached a lot to the Anton LaVey and Satanism. You know, and people get a lot of like, oh, you're a Satanist. You're worshiping goats or sacrificing goats, and then you're killing children. It's like, no. It's not even like that. You know, the LaVeyan Satanism is just basically like you're worshiping yourself. You do whatever you want, and you know the consequences. You know, and that's kind of like the gist of it.
Yeah.
And now, looking back, I've read a lot of his works. I've done a lot of research. It's pretty silly. His whole thing was just a drug-induced fucking, you know, in the 70s, that's all it was. It was just him partying and doing drugs and fucking chicks and strippers and like whatever it was they were doing.
Yeah, I always thought he was pretty good at PR.
Oh, for sure. He was the face of it, you know, but a lot of his explanations of things were kind of like I don't know, I related to them because it was like, I want to do these things and I don't want to feel bad for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I want to take mushrooms and go out in the woods and trip out and do that, I want to do it and not feel crucified, no pun intended,
Right.
for wanting to do that. If I want to go to the strip club and throw money at strippers, well, okay, that's what I want to do, and I'm not going to feel persecuted because that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. Like, that was a lot for me. I definitely I connected with a lot of this LaVey stuff for a few years, you know, but as I read more into it, I kind of just realized like the whole show of it all, it was just kind of like silly to me. And then now if you like talk to like real Satanists that are like into that believe that stuff, like they have those beliefs, they're just like, Anton LaVey was an idiot. So, you know, and as of now, I'm not anything. Wouldn't consider myself a Satanist. I would just kind of just be more like, you know, I feel like, this is going to sound very arrogant, but like, I kind of like worship myself, you know, like I don't push shit in my body anymore. I try to eat right. I try to do right. And I try to be the best version of myself because, you know, let's be honest, we're not going to live forever. And it doesn't matter how many times you pray to God, you're still going to die, you know? So, and everyone's like worried about the afterlife and like, where are you going to go when you die? It's like, who the fuck knows? Mm-hmm. Nobody knows. I mean, you could be told, and this comes with my whole like being told something for so long as a child and then realizing it's all bullshit. It's like, how do I know that that's true? Mm-hmm. If, you know, like, how do I know? Like, for all I know, it's just, that's it. Boom, lights out, you're done. Mm-hmm. You know? So it's like, I'm not going to live my life worrying about where am I going to go when I die. It's like, I want to live my life and I want to live it good. And I want to be able to like people to be like, man, that guy kicked ass. That guy lived an awesome life. You know, even if it's just the people close to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's one of those things where you like want to leave a decent legacy of knowing that you were, you know, a good person and you know, try to do as much as possible. Yeah, I actually agree with that.
I think a big chunk of it is like just being good to people and being good to each other and being good to yourself. You know, like it's got nothing in my eyes. It's got nothing to do with Christ or Buddha or Allah or Satan or like all this stuff. It's just about being true to yourself, being true to other people, treating people the way that you're being treated. You know, a big thing of it is like Aleister Crowley always says, like, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. If you want to do this, do it. And that's your belief and you can do it. But just know that if I go and fucking rob a bank, that there's consequences. Mm-hmm. And if that's what you want to do, then who's to say that you shouldn't do it? That's kind of like the whole thing. It's like, okay, yes, there's laws we have to follow, but why do they make those laws? And why do we have to follow that law? That's kind of like that whole independence thing is like, why do I have to pay taxes? You know what I mean? Like, really though, if you think about it, it's like, who is this fucking IRS person? And what the fuck is the reason why I have to pay them this huge amount of money every year for my already garnished paycheck? It's just like, and that's the thing. I mean, obviously I pay taxes because I just don't feel like dealing with the bullshit. But like, this comes back to the saying is like, if I don't like, why? Who makes these laws up? Who makes the law saying that you're going to go to hell if you don't fucking, you know, get married, have 4 kids and spread the word of God? Like who says that? How is that true? That was the thing for me. It's like, I always just felt so like, it's bullshit. Mm-hmm. It's all bullshit. And your relationship to God, that's great. That's your relationship. And I respect that. I respect a lot of like Christians because they are very determined and they have this like, it's almost like this happiness with it. And that's fine. And that's great. You know, like I have a few friends, you know, like a few people that are in my life. And it's still a lot of my family that are still go to church. They do their thing and they're happy. And that's great. I just wasn't happy with it. And I wasn't convinced and it didn't work for me. So, and as I grew up, I grew out of trying to like rebel against it and be like this, oh, Satan. And like, you know, and I grew up and realized that, you know what, this is my relationship to my God and that's it. And no one's going to tell me different. And if you want to have that relationship the way you do, then fine. As long as you don't fucking try to force anything down my throat, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think that that's sort of a basic rule that I've come up with is that, you know, the idea that I can believe the way I want to believe, and if you believe differently, that's perfectly fine. We just won't fuck with each other. You know, that exactly. It's like a very basic concept is like, don't make somebody else's life shitty because of what you think.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's 100% true. And, you know, because when I was growing up, it was definitely one of the big kickers for me was you can't listen to rock and heavy metal music, you know, because that was going to send you straight to hell. And
well, exactly. And that was like, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
But for me, it was like, that was like, man, I mean, I got introduced to the Motley Crue Child of the Devil like when I was 5 or 6 years old. And it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. You know, and then I went to a Catholic school, and like I had a Motley Crue shirt, and I had to turn it inside out just because it's got pictures of dudes in like chains and leather, and like they're not doing. It doesn't even say anything.
Yeah. Well, one of the kickers for me was
out of fear, right?
Yeah. Like there was one time I remember I was wearing a Dangerous Toy. Do you remember the band Dangerous Toys?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I had a Dangerous Toys tour shirt over at the school that I was going to. And I remember a guy came up to me and he's like, "Hey man, are you a Christian?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, you can't be wearing that shirt."
Why?
Yeah, I know. That was a big kicker for me. I was like, wait a minute, how are those irreconcilable? It's like, I can enjoy both. You know, you're wrong.
You know what's funny too about it is like, I'm pretty sure that Jesus would never have done that to somebody or said that to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people like say this to me about Jesus. I'm like, I have no doubt in my mind that there was a person named Jesus Christ, for sure, and he was probably a fucking great guy, and he probably all he wanted to do was change the way people were treating each other, and he wanted to do good and wanted to like show that you don't have to fucking be an asshole to be a good person, and you can just and I don't doubt it at all. Do I think that he walked on water? Do I think that he touched people and healed fucking leprosy? No, that's all stories that get discombobulated and made into bigger stories. It's just like fucking rumors. Same with rumors in school. You know, oh, that guy's a Satanist. Oh my God, that guy's sacrificing goats. You know, it's just like it turns into something that's really not. And that's the same thing with like a perfect example I like to use about is like William Wallace from Braveheart. You know, he was a good guy and he wanted to fight for his people and he wanted to fight for the injustice that was going on for the Scots. And all of a sudden he starts winning, people start getting behind him, and then he's all of a sudden like, oh my God, he's a threat, you know, and so we've got to get rid of this guy. But the people loved him because he was giving hope back to the people when there was no hope left. And this is kind of like, it's almost literally the same fucking story as Jesus, you know, and it's like, and then people like the stories like, oh yeah, he's 10 feet tall, he can kill 20 men at one time. It's like all these stories started turning into like, no, he's just a dude that's just fucking not, he's got enough. It's basically what it is. So, yeah. And like not being able to wear a Dangerous Toy shirt. I mean, what?
Yeah. I know, of all bands, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not shitting on them, but I was just like, wow, you know, it's like Dangerous Toy. If I was wearing Slayer, I could maybe see the argument.
Exactly. Which is even funny too, because Slayer, I mean, Tom Araya is a devout Christian.
Right, yeah. I forgot.
It was all a show, you know, it was all part of like selling records, and it worked for them, and that's great.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious how he is very much kind of, he pulled a fast one on everyone, and no one really calls him on it, and I think that's great. I think that's hilarious that he's just like, whatever, I like country music too, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think as you get older, man, a lot of that stuff that you cared about when you were 19, 20, 21, you just don't care about anymore. It's the same thing with me. Like even 10 years ago when I was like, all right, I'm doing a song about fucking Christ, and I'm like, I just don't care anymore. You know, like people are going to believe what they want. They're going to connect with my lyrics whether they want to or not. And there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to write for myself, you know? And when we did Daughter of the Morning Star, that's just a made up story. That's all it is. It's just a made up story. And it's a part one of the 3-part story of After the Great Fire and Before the Flames is literally what it is. And no one really ever got it. So because it's the same girl in all 3 videos. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you if it was like a concept album, because that was something that...
It essentially, it became a concept album. Daughter of the Morning, or After the Great Fire is on our first record. So, but when we were writing Before the Flames was getting written, and I was like, man, this would be work perfect with After the Great Fire. And so I was like, you know what, let's do it like as a prequel and it just became that. But Daughter of the Morning Star is essentially like, because it's the same girl, Daughter of the Morning Star is that girl, because obviously she's made a pact with the devil. She's basically Satan or whatever, you're a witch or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
She's immortal. So she lives through all these generations of life as a different type of witch. But that was the start of her becoming what she is now. So she's just a pagan girl living in, wherever during the Puritan times. She, using plants and animals, and she was a white witch, basically. She wasn't hurting anybody. She just wanted to use basically the same as what was happening way back, the Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, pagans are satanic because they don't believe in Christ, but they just live off the land, and they're one with nature, the sun and the trees and the moon and the stars. That was so because she was living there and she was different than everybody else in the village, these villagers are like, oh my God, she's a witch.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the Salem witch trials, that kind of thing. It's like, oh my God, she's left-handed. We got to burn her at the stake.
Mm-hmm.
Because all based out of fear, and that fear got pushed and pushed and built and built and built. It's like anybody that was a little bit different, it's like, oh my God, they're a witch.
Mm-hmm.
So she basically was just living her life away from everybody, doing her own thing. And these guys came and kidnapped her and took her and killed her, raped her, killed her, left her for dead. Well, she didn't die, and she made a pact with Satan and came back, and that's when she lifts up off the ground and is like, boom, here I am, is basically what it is. And that's that burned the Christians one by one.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's had enough. And this even comes back to the whole bullying thing,
Yeah.
She's been fucking tortured, tormented, just for being different. And so now she's like, okay, you want me to be like this? Here it is. So
Mm-hmm.
now she comes back. And now she's lived her life being this whatever messenger of Satan or a witch. And so Before the Flames is just her version of it now, as she's just trying to use these children to sacrifice to their God and this and that. And so that's kind of they're all three kind of tied together. So Daughter of the Morning Star would be the first part, Before
Mm-hmm.
the Flames is the second, and then After the Great Fire is the ending where these kids revolt against this band of satanic nuns or whatever, the satanic cult, lock them in the or the women lock these kids in the building and burn them alive, set the building on fire.
Mm-hmm.
But now the building is alive with the ghosts of these children, is basically what it is.
It almost sounds like the kids are. It almost sounds like the nun has become the villain, and the kids have become what the nun was when she was attacked by the Puritans.
It's 100% what it is. It's a full circle. She basically, but she was doing it for a different reason. She was doing it because this was her revenge on society and her revenge on whatever. And she's just using these. I mean, they don't really tie together so much. I never thought about it beyond anything. Okay, these songs are going to work together, but I mean, it's not as deep and convoluted as it sounds. It's more just it's a cool kind of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cool thing about music and lyrics and not putting the lyrics in the songs. Is people can make their own interpretation of what it is and be like, man, this is cool. This is what I think it's about. And I have people all the time yeah, that song's about this, right? I'm like, yeah, man, totally. I don't even tell them no, because I don't want to ruin it for them. It's if that's what they think, then that's great. Yeah, that's what that song's about.
Yeah.
And but yeah, man, I mean, we're off on a trip now, but.
No, that's all right. Yeah, because I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I wanted to ask you about, because I felt like there was some sort of a concept leading through those things, but I don't think I would have picked up on that necessarily. So that was kind of interesting to hear, and I'll have to go back and look at the videos and listen to the songs again.
Watch them through. Watch Daughter of the Morning Star first, and then watch Before the Flames, and then After the Great Fire, and it'll piece together a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that, because I like that. That's a cool idea.
Yeah, and we just we got a little bit of shit for those videos just because of the connotation of these women using these children, and I'm like, it's a fucking story. You know what I mean? It's not real. It's all these people can make these movies anytime they want, and it's totally fine. But when we do it in a video, it's oh my God, these guys are Satanists. They're talking about child abuse. It's holy fuck, are you kidding?
Oh man,
it's just storytelling. That's all it is. That's all songs have always been. It's and that's what I think that a lot of bands forget to do. It's always just based on oh my God, my childhood was bad, or there are all these reasons why they write songs. Oh, my girl and I broke up in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to always just try to tell stories. That was just a big thing to me, and I feel like it's a lost art, and especially in heavy music.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, that's one of the things that Johnny Cash was really good at, was he would tell stories in all of his songs, and if you took them literally, it would scare the shit out of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that a lot of those, like the highwaymen and those country guys back in the day, that was their thing. It's like, let's tell stories that you sing when you're listen to when you're on the road or you're sitting by a campfire, and like just, it's like that was the cool thing about it. And that's kind of like what we try to like bring back to heavy music.
Yeah. And I think the reason a lot of people are scared of heavy music is because they incorporate some of the same themes that country has always done. But when you guys make it with the aggression and the sound of what the story might actually be about, I think that just scares the hell out of people. If they had a nice hooky melody, they'd be like, oh, that's okay.
Yep, absolutely.
So you guys are going to be working on, or no? Are you working on a new EP right now, or are you preparing to?
We are, yeah. We just finished tracking. It's being mixed right now.
Okay. How long do you think it's going to be before that pops out?
I think they're talking like end of April.
Oh, wow. That's really soon. That's fantastic.
End of April, beginning of May. So what is it, February, March? Well, maybe end of May, maybe. Probably realistically.
Okay. So you guys are going to be done with the tour by then, and so you'll be able to push that out and maybe go on the road again?
Yeah, we're going to release a new song right before the tour, a new song in either a video or a lyric video they're talking about. So right before the tour or like during the tour. And then, the record will come out, and then we've got more stuff happening at the summer and hopefully more bigger tours and then Europe again and trying to stay busy.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know what? We love it. It's amazing to go there and tour compared to the United States and North America. It's just awesome. Like I think there's a lost, there's a lot of lost shit with touring bands here, and people just like kind of lose sight of like, man, these bands are working really hard. And like in Europe, it's just like there's people at the shows. They're so happy to be there. They're buying stuff. They're excited. They're singing along, even if they don't know the words. And it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that Europe still seems to have a really healthy appreciation for, like rock and guitar-driven music. And I feel like here in the last 4 or 5 years that America's kind of disconnected from that. And I get a feeling it's not going to get any better for a while, and that it's going to be like another generation before rock is really appreciated in America the way it was. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go. You have given me more time than you probably even needed to, but I appreciate you talking to me, Connor.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm always down to talk about stuff that's cool,
Yeah, no, it's great. I have a hard time sometimes booking people for the show because I think a lot of people worry that I'm going to kind of attack them for religious beliefs, but it's more like I love to hear people's perspectives on religion and their beliefs and where they came from, and so... Yeah, it was really cool hearing what you had to say, and it really informed a lot of the ways I'm going to listen to All Hail the Yeti from here on out.
Well, man, that's great to hear. And like I said, it's not, again, for me, it's not something that I have against Christianity. It's more about organized religion and like what they've done to people in the past and what they continue to keep doing. It's nothing to do with just Christianity in specific, and it's one thing to be a Christian than it is to be a part of that. It's two different things. And I think that's with any religion. I think you can be a good person and be a Satanist and not, and there's probably a lot of fear that goes along with that, just like there is with people that are fear Christians. Yeah. So I think it's just more about ignorance and people not understanding and they're scared of what they don't understand.
Yeah, I would agree completely. Mm-hmm. Well, listen, do you want to tell everybody where they can find All Hail the Yeti stuff, where they should go and look for you guys?
All Hail the Yeti can be found at allhailtheyeti.com, Amazon, Spotify, minusheadrecords.com, theoraclemanagement.com, eBay, wherever, Craigslist.
Wherever you can look, find it.
Exactly. It'll be around.
All right, Connor. Well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I do too. Thank you for your time.
It didn't matter, there were no signs. inside his head, he always hides. There were no reasons for the abuse. He tried his best to be the same. This was his violence with no excuse. No reason for it, just to cause pain. Stand up, fight back. The sky is turning. Turning back, turning back. Losing again. Stand up, fight back. The sky is turning. Turning back, turning back. Losing again. Just so broken he gave it up. Destroyed and dead, he'll open up. Down the block, not across the street. Kill yourself, you're worthless and weak. It's the only thing he ever heard, and he listened to every word. Displayed his art across the wall. It paints a picture and fucked us all. Stand up, fight back. The sky is turning. Turning back, turning back. Losing again. Stand up, fight back. The sky is turning. Turning back, turning back. Losing again. We are the haunted. The season's open. We are the daunted. It's hunting season. Stand up, fight back. The sky is turning. Turning black, turning back. Don't lose it again. Stand up, fight back. The sky is turning. Turning back, turning back. Losing again. Stand up, fight back. The sky is turning. Turning black, turning black. Losing again.
So that's going to wrap up another episode of the Rock God Podcast. I want to thank Connor for taking a few minutes to talk to us. Make sure you go and check out allhailtheyeti.com for all the tour dates and make sure that you stop by one of their shows when they come to your town. Also, make sure you go to heavy-vinyl.com to see any past episodes of the Rock God Podcast and check out any kind of vinyl that you may want to pick up and be putting onto your turntable. Also, go to our Instagram, Heavy Vinyl Records, our Facebook, Heavy Vinyl and Cassettes, and Twitter, @VinylHeavy. Make sure to check out all episodes of the Rock God Podcast, normally published every other Friday, on all major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. God bless.